It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, the Detroit Lions are now posted back-to-back 5-1 starts for the first time since the franchise moved to Detroit in 1934. The Lions defeated a very tough Minnesota Vikings team 31-29 last Sunday and now are leading the NFC North. The Lions now come home to take on the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-5 this year, but whom they have not beaten since the team relocated from Houston in 1999. We'll discuss both games and more next. Now here's your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski Drew, and it is Thursday, October 24th, 2024. We're talking Detroit Lions football, and joining me, of course, is Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well, Drew. Doing well here. We're in week 9 of the high school football season, which, if you are familiar with Michigan high school football, that is the end of the road of the regular season. Will be the end of the road for many teams out there that will not qualify for the Michigan High School Athletic Association state playoffs. We in Marine City feel fortunate that we are likely to make the playoff pool this year. So it won't be the end of the year for us tomorrow, but we head to Detroit, take on the Detroit Central Trailblazers. So a couple of unique games for a school up here in the Gateway of the Thumb in St. Clair County these last 2 weeks. We played Jackson High School at home at East China Stadium, and then now we are taking on the Detroit Central Trailblazers tomorrow night in Detroit.
Yeah, and they're pretty tough. They haven't lost since week 1, right?
Yes, they're very, very good. Yeah, they lost the first 2 weeks of the year, and then since then have won the smaller division city championship. So it's a very formidable foe. They're well coached. Athletic. It's going to be a difficult task for the Mariners for sure. It's going to get us prepped for the playoffs, and it's a team that we could see once again in the playoffs as they're a Division 6 qualifier as well.
Awesome. Looking forward to that, Coach. Keep it up. Keep things rolling over there, Marine City. Gotta love it. Hey, before we jump into our Lions preview of the Tennessee game, and of course reviewing the Minnesota game from last week that the Lions won 31-29, got to talk about Jameson Williams. He just a couple of days ago came down. He's going to get a 2-game suspension for PED use. They haven't specifically said what it was, but based on the letter of the law of the suspensions, it likely was it wasn't a steroid or a performance enhancing drug in that regard, Coach. More like something on the lines of maybe an amphetamine or something like that. Hell, even Sudafed can be viewed as such. And I'm not saying that's what he took. I don't know. But he's getting a 2-game slap on the wrist, basically. Not the end of the world for this week, perhaps, but I know a couple in next week, they got the Green Bay Packers, and they won't have Jameson Williams, Coach. This will be the second suspension, right, for JMO? Yeah.
The injuries and then the second suspension. And like you said, it's a milder violation than it would have been for like an anabolic steroid, positive test or something. It's a banned substance nonetheless. I mean, that's what it is. It's fairly, I think, commonly known. And that, these guys take pre-workout before games. There's a lot of other, legal forms of getting fired up. A lot of that, there's a lot of caffeine and some of it. I mean, I'm not I'm not going to say that I know these things. You probably have a much greater knowledge base of that than I do. But it's something along those lines. But it was something that did have maybe, like you said, pseudoephedrine, or one of those elements that are banned in it. And, it was something that he probably purchased, through, his circles of sports nutrition, which these guys have, there's a lot of kind of startup companies that really try to get in with these guys and, try to get a quick, sponsorship. Because they'll Sky, and who knows what it was, but I mean, I think Dan Campbell said it best. We're gonna let a line down for JMO to keep climbing up, and maybe did he lose his grip a little bit here? I mean, JMO's not making excuses in those kinds of things. These are things, though, however, that are going to accumulate and be part of JMO's evaluation when it comes time to thinking about extending him. And, that's down the road. I think JMO's got a couple years more here in Detroit. And who knows by then, hey, guys like Chris Carter struggled earlier in their career in the league. And we can see, Anquan Bolden had some, he was kind of a rough character those first, several years in the league. And, you've seen, some of those kinds of, guys really kind of become, really, really, truly kind of like good old pros and mentors. Chris Carter's, very, very influential member of the NFL alumni community that really educates the young players about their financial responsibilities and their opportunities that they are getting with this money that they're earning and what they should do to save it and that kind of thing. So, and Anquan Bolden's a true ambassador of the game. He's spoken in front of Congress before and for football. So, we're talking about some real high quality caliber individuals. So, hey, JMO's we're going to get him back. I don't have any, we of course would love to have him. If he's going to miss a game, I'm not trying to make light of this one that we're going to be talking about down the road, but I think there could be, we're not in the playoffs. We're not trying to secure the division or something right this split second. And hey, we want a real quality football game, which we're going to go over right now, where JMO didn't have much of an impact in. So, hey, Godspeed, JMO. Let's get it right, babe.
Yeah. And, as a fan, I'm not pissed off per se. I think he's handling it well. I think Coach Campbell seems satisfied at least with what's going on. I'll say this: can't have it again. Can't. They might handle it. They might handle it diplomatically, but I can guarantee you there won't be an extension, at least not in Detroit, if it keeps happening. And it a little bit here, a little bit there. He's just got to realize. And like you said, Coach, who knows? Maybe it was somebody trying to say, hey, I'm trying to kick something off the ground. We want you to try this. You never know. Hell.
And if he does get something that happens again, who's going to want to extend? Who's going to want to go out there and spend big money on him? He may be coming back on a year show me deal anyway.
Yeah.
At that rate, he may be. So,
I hope there's some positive, influential people in his ear telling him he's got to be careful, not walk on eggshells. It's not like he's got confine himself anywhere, but no, I just be careful, man. You can't trust everybody, and not everybody's got your best interest at heart either. And I'm not saying he was a hapless victim. This kind of stuff's been happening with supplements for a long time now, 2 decades. So you got to understand. But let's get to the games, like you said, Coach. And yeah, JMO didn't have a big matter of fact, he only had 1 catch for -4 yards, but no matter. The Lions win 34-29 in Minnesota. They get the game-winning field goal from Jake Bates at the end. I believe it was 44 yards. But by and large, the Lions were at least in control of this one, Coach. I wouldn't say they certainly didn't dominate. Nobody dominated. It was a very back and forth game, but did you ever feel at any time that this game was really in doubt, that the Lions had a real uphill climb at any point?
Well, I started the afternoon off at St. John Vianney Catholic Church at my nephew's christening. So, and the deacon who ran that ceremony said that, he's well aware that, he will definitely make sure that, individuals will get to view the second half of the Lions Vikings game. That was part of the sermon. So he reassured us there a little bit. Some people were starting to rock in their chairs a little bit and get McGinty-like, knowing what was going on, because it was 10-0 at that time. And people were starting to kind of pick at the fingernails a little bit and bite the lip a little bit, going, come on, let's get it rolling here. We gotta get in front of the TV and get this fixed. And then sure enough, it did. They went on a 21-0 run and took a 21-10 lead going into the half. So, the offense once again responded just so marvelously, and at times was just not really a stoppable entity. And that speaks volumes to where we are. This offense is clicking once again. And you take JMO out of and you said 1 catch for -4 yards. Well, then you see the production come from other people.
Yeah.
And, once again, we ran the football on a good defense with our starting right guard out.
Yep.
So, I mean, if that doesn't speak to just where the Detroit Lions are, our quarterback was once again perfect in the first half. It was 12 for 12. And I think we really need to think about start calling him not Jared Goff but Kurt Hennig, because he's Mr. Perfect. I mean, he does not make many errors these days, and when he does, hey, kudos to that team, because it's too bad he did it, and it's a bummer that he did it, but I mean he's in a zone right now that it is so hard to beat him, because he just does not make. It's not that he doesn't make a mistake. He doesn't get an incomplete pass sometimes. Like, it's very hard. It's rare for him to even throw an incomplete pass right now. I mean, he's white hot. He's white hot. The defense, and and I know we're going to categorize some things, and I want you to really give your thoughts here, Drew. Were they good enough to win this game? They absolutely were. And I think their linebackers made a lot of plays. I think their defensive tackles were very good. And our secondary really has shown just to be a great secondary. This pass rush, however, was not the caliber what we're going to need in order to win games, I think, in January. I think we need to invest something. I am not, I want it to be responsible. I want it to be within the framework of what we do and the formula the Detroit Lions use. But I do not believe that pass rusher is on this roster right now that is going to supplement what we need. But Drew, what are your thoughts about the game? And then at the end, you chime in. What are your thoughts on the pass rush? But your sentiments first, man. What do you think?
Well, certainly the defense was good enough to win, obviously, and they did. The secondary is much improved. Justin Jefferson was held to, I think, 84 yards receiving. That's damn good. Let's put it this way, folks. Last year, he torched their asses for 201 game. Even though the Lions won the game, there was no containing Justin Jefferson. They did it. They did it last Sunday. I'm encouraged by that. They were able to keep Aaron Jones somewhat in check, especially at least after the first drive. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, Coach. I think the pass rush was at least effective. They did get some hurries. They got some sacks. But to your point, there's no one guy, and this was said immediately after the Hutchinson injury. There's nobody on that line that you're game planning for specifically right now. That's no knock on anybody, but Aiden Hutchinson's a pass rush specialist, an absolute menace out there. You've got to account for him. That's a little less pressure on that opposing offensive line, opposing offensive coordinator. But AG's done a great job. Yeah,
the pass rush to me appeared to be responsible. It was well thought out as far as it being a very conservative way of rushing the passer. It's basically containing and framing him and not coming underneath so he can flush and create a different window for himself. These windows are going to be there and shrink, and that's how it was meant to be. And that is good enough to win a football game for you. It's good enough to win a big football game for you. And however, that being said, if you do that to Jared Goff right now, he's probably going to go like 18 for 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you need to be able to apply pressure, and you need to be able to do it within that same framework. And they did not get nearly as deep into the quarterback because Aiden Hutchinson wasn't out there. And that's not just because Aiden Hutchinson was the guy that was always getting down and in and hitting home or nearly hitting home. Sometimes it was somebody else because they slid protected towards Aiden Hutchinson and drew another guy for somebody else. So, I mean, Josh Paschal does deserve credit for the responsible game that he played out there. However, I do think they need to invest in something. that's not for this episode. I know we talked about that a little bit last week, and I'm guessing that maybe we'll get to talk about that again, maybe in next episode yet. After this one, it may become a little bit more real. That being said, again, we're playing a 1-5 football team. But hey, the way we're defending the run is going to really make people predictable. And hey, if Will Levis is not going to come in here and it's going to be loud and it's going to be weird, and it could really get chaotic for them.
Well, let's jump into that. The Lions are taking on the Tennessee Titans, coach, and they're coming to Ford Field. That hostile territory, like you said. I would think Levis is going to start. I don't know if they're going to play Rudolph or not. That's definitely been the issue in Tennessee this year. There's no question about that, because when you look at that roster, especially on the defensive side of the football, Jeffrey Simmons leading the way there. That's a pretty stout team. This defense is pretty solid, but the offense, coach, this team, I'm looking at their games right now. They've scored 17 points in 3 of their games. They scored 14 and 10 in the others. The only game that they did win was at Miami, minus Tua Tagovailoa, and they beat them 31-12, but they've not been able to break the 20 mark in 5 of their 6 games. So that certainly will bode well for the Lions. But let's talk about the other side of the football here. How does this? What do you do to attack this Tennessee defense, coach?
Well, I mean, I think you want to kind of continue to follow the formula and not get impatient, because, like you said, they do play pretty good defense.
Yeah.
They can bottle your run game up a little bit, which not many people can say they've done that to us. I think we need to stay patient and stay with the run game. I think we will get things going. But you know what? Hey, let's take a few shots. Let's flex our muscle at quarterback a little bit and get vertical, so we have to back people off a little bit more and let our guys, linemen block linemen and do our thing and get running the football a little bit. The name of the game, Drew, and it's a real kind of boring statement, but it's to not make mistakes. If we don't make mistakes, they're not capable probably of generating tons of scores against us. The way they could get 31 points against us would be if we gave up prime field position via a turnover, or a defensive, they get a defensive touchdown or something like that. So, I mean, we've got to make sure that we're real solvent that way. Like I said, is be patient, because, the numbers we'll see, we'll have to maybe do a little bit more of an analysis next week statistically, and see what it looks like. But, hey, I think you stay committed to being a team that wants to run the football. You can shorten the first half a little bit. If it's close, it's close. If it's low score, it's a low score. And then, we get into a second half and then we make an adjustment and maybe kick things up a gear and then we can pick up a little bit of a lead and move away there. Not fair. And I know I'm not trying to get into a final score or anything here yet, Drew, but I mean, I want, but we don't want to get there yet. But it's not fair for us to say, this should be 55-17. This isn't college football or high school football. But the expectation should be there for us to thrive. Where do you see the strength needing to be for the offense?
Well, I agree. They need to stick with what's working, and there's no team in the league that the Lions should be playing against, at least on the offensive side of the football, where they're concerned about, well, we shouldn't throw at that guy or we shouldn't run to this side of the. No, do what you need to do. Do what you feel. Do what you've game planned for all week. Do what's worked all year, and if the opposition stops it, okay, no problem. There's plan B, there's plan C, D, E, F, G. There's a lot of options on this team. But again, it all predicates and forms around that offensive line. The offensive line keeps doing their thing. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I believe Zeitler will be playing this week. We're hopeful. Certainly Graham Glasgow once again shifts over to the right side. Iowa Sika goes in the left side, left guard. They don't miss a beat. I can't. We know about how great Decker, Ragnow, and Sewell are. They're great, but man, we got to talk about Graham Glasgow. That guy does everything. He has played all three middle line positions already this season, and the Lions are 5-1.
Kelly, baby, it should be maybe Lomas, Graham Glasgow, baby.
Mm-hmm.
You can play up and down those three positions, and again, what a marvelous addition. And being that he's an Ohio native, he's a U of M graduate. He's rooted through in this general area. I mean, he could be a guy that the wheels will fall off as a Detroit Lion, and let's hope that it remains that way. But absolutely, is he 100% valuable? You're 20 minutes in here, Drew, into the Sports Peninsula podcast, Detroit Lions, Tennessee Titans preview. A little bit of a tangent before we shift gears completely. There's a guy that's going to be playing. We talked about the Lions offense, about the Tennessee defense coming at us. We talked about Jeffrey Simmons, but there's going to be an interesting player playing in this game by the name of Harold Landry.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about him, and why would that be kind of a guy to look at in this ball game, Drew?
Well, one reason is that in our very first season, our very first round mock draft, we mocked Harold Landry going to the Detroit Lions, and damn, we were wrong. They picked some Ragnow fellow out of Arkansas. Well, it's okay. We didn't make a bad pick, but I'll give Bob Quinn his due. He picked Frank Ragnow. Great pick. So we know about Harold Landry out of BC, right? And but man, he's having a big year, and yeah, he is on the radar. Both he and Simmons have been kind of dangled out there as potential trade pieces because Tennessee's going to tear it down and rebuild it again. And yeah, Landry is someone the Lions will be looking at. And it's certainly, if he shows out in this game, yeah, it's going to catch some attention because he's going to be either beating Decker or Sewell. So yeah, that's a big deal. But again, I don't like anything. A lot of players look wonderful and would be great fits in Detroit, but they got to fit in the salary cap too, not just this year, but next year as well. So again, but I don't put anything past Brad Holmes. The guy's a magician. So if he thinks it can happen and makes it happen, I'm all on board with it. But yeah, Harold Landry's a nice player. He's having a big year. They definitely got to watch that. But to be honest with you, when you look at that, the Titans have had a nice pass rush this year. I'm very confident that the Detroit Lions will be able to handle that. Where I'm concerned, Coach, not overly concerned, but it's legitimate. I mean, Williams is out. So, yeah, next man up, I get it. There's Tim Patrick, there's Khalif Raymond, but neither of them are the downfield threat Jameson Williams says. He has a special knack for that. Sam Laporta, he's been very good this year. He just hasn't been as prolific catching the football because he, quite frankly, just hasn't been targeted as much. There's no doubt other teams are keying on him. I don't doubt that, but that's okay. That's why Jameson Williams having a huge season right now. He has maybe a third of the catches as St. Brown, but almost the same amount of yards. I mean, he makes big plays. So they're going to have to supplement that. I'm sure Ben Johnson has a lot of tricks up his sleeve.
Yep. And I think maybe we can look at Allen Robinson a little bit this week.
There you go. It sounds like he's going to be in.
For the next couple of weeks, could assert himself as a fill-in of sorts. Maybe not just throw bombs, but some of those same routes. Allen Robinson was real successful at throughout his NFL career, whether he's with the Jags or the Bears or some he's had a lot of stops. Drew, he's been around the block, but he's also been a prolific wide receiver in this industry, especially in his younger days of his career. We've got him, the type of receiver that, Donovan Peoples was or is, he's the guy that they could run those kinds of route packages towards. And it'd be, I guess, if you want to do a pseudo replacement of JMO, Donovan Peoples would be sort of that guy. But I think you could create some sort of synergy between, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as you had mentioned, Khalif Raymond, as you had mentioned, Patrick and Allen Robinson. And yes, I think Sam Laporta can be disguised and we can use him a little more vertically as well. Yeah. And do some different things with him on the inside and motion away and and be in a good spot that way for him to be able to maybe make some plays down the field as well. But yeah, I mean, that'd be one of those ones that you can really, okay, let's say we're up 14-3 going in towards the half, and we're getting the ball coming in out of the second half. And, you go up top to JMO and make it 28-3 at halftime, come out and score. It's 35-3, get the clock rolling. This one's just about done, So, I mean, that's what JMO can do for you in a game like this. If you can get up and get a, competitive lead, he can really make things get wide open in a hurry. But, hey, we're going to have to scheme without him.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, no doubt they've done that. We'll see a lot more. We may see a lot of two-back sets where Gibbs and Montgomery are in the game together, and one of them flares out to catch a pass. That very likely. So I'm as a fan, I mean, I know what Campbell has said, and of course, he's not going to let on that they're that worried about it, and I'm sure they're not. I'm not worried about it as a fan. This team has too many weapons. It's not like back in the day, if Calvin Johnson went down, what were you going to do? Well, yeah, you were pretty screwed. I mean, not that they didn't have anyone else, but nothing close to that. And they couldn't say, well, we'll throw to these other five guys. They maybe had one or two, and that was about it. You got a lot of options now. It's a really special team. It really is. When we hit nothing we've seen in Detroit in our lifetime. No way. Not this.
Guys,
Yeah.
I've been watching this about 5 years old. So, I mean, 45 years of watching Lions football. I mean, we have 50-year fans from birth, but for 45 legitimate years following the team, but nothing like that there got for us. If you're young and you're younger than us, and thanks for watching. If you are, these old geezers have never seen anything quite like it. And we had a couple of good squads, but
yeah. I'll tell you what, if you didn't see the 90s and Barry Sanders, you've suffered. You've suffered as a fan. You've not had a lot. I mean, other than very recently. So,
I mean, in our championship teams from the 50s, they had some Hall of Fame. I mean, hey, I mean, these teams beat those teams from them. Of course, the physical nature of the game has completely changed. The dynamic of the athletes changed, but those were darn good football teams that had really, really good Hall of Fame caliber players on them. So, I mean, that I guess if you want to go team for team, era for era, I mean, yeah, those guys had some greats, but these guys haven't had the opportunity to define their terms yet in regards to, there's some time still, a lot of time left on that. So, for sure.
You'd also
it's amazing. It's truly amazing.
You'd have to be about 85 years old to recall those teams too, Coach. I mean, my dad was born in 51, and he does not remember the 57 season.
Yeah,
so, and the reason, and one of the main reasons why that is because the NFL didn't really take full, getting full national media attention until the season after 1958, when John Amici and the Colts beat the New York Giants in Yankee Stadium in overtime in the championship game, and it was on national TV, and that's when the NFL really took off. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Lions the year before were the kings of the NFL, but they missed it by 1 year. But yeah, they were the class of the league in the 50s and the 60s. They were tough, but yeah, this has been a special season, and it keeps rolling.
Yeah, my dad's 77, and he was 10 years old when they did that. So I mean, he does remember it. But I mean, again, he was 10. He was our age when we won the World Series. So I mean, yeah, he knows that team pretty good. But you're talking about a 77-year-old man. I think you have to be 77 years old or older to appreciate that championship.
Very, very much so. Very much so. All right, Coach, let's talk about the Lions defense against this Tennessee offense. Now, again, as I touched on earlier, this offense from Tennessee hasn't broken 20 points other than one game, which was against a pretty banged up Miami team, which is their only win this year. They struggle to score. They do have a nice running back in Pollard, who's got over 400 yards this year, right on the nose. Tyjae Spears is their backup. He's got about 114 yards. They have a nice receiving core, Coach. Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks, and Tyler Boyd, and then Okonkwo at tight end. But the problem's been at quarterback, whether it was Levis. I think Willis played briefly there until they traded him to Green Bay early in the season. And then Mason Rudolph got the start last week, and that didn't exactly work out great. Again, I'm not sure who they're going to start yet this week, and I'm not sure they've even announced it. But again, minus Hutchinson last week, and we saw some pretty good results. But again, how do they generate? I think the key here, coach, is whoever's playing quarterback's got to be real uncomfortable Sunday.
Yeah, and so it's going to be another spotlight and showcase of how we can pressure a quarterback, because boy, would it be nice to go into this environment that is going to be absolutely burning on fire inside in there. Mm-hmm. I mean, that stadium is so locked in and so in love and so in sync to each other and what's going on, and they know when to shut up, they know when to speak up, and they know what they're doing. And probably more so than almost every stadium in this league right now. It's as tough to play there as it is anywhere, and it gets loud. If you could add the element of a right side of you just being up, there's pressure, it's coming, or the left side, it's coming, and because over the middle, you can basically where you can sense where it's coming is right in front of you and throw right over the top of that and probably be successful.
Yeah.
But when it's coming from one of your sides and you're blind at all to it, it's very uncomfortable. And we've got to be able to generate that. And if we prove that we can't, I think we still win this football game, because it's going to come down to us, bundling up that run and packing it back up for them, and then go down to Dixieland with it. But that's what they've got to do. And I think they're going to do that against this team. I think, Aiden Hutchinson impacts the run as well, but I think Josh Paschal, Levy, these guys can do a pretty nice job in doing that as, too. Are we going to show the ability to hit home with just a traditional, in scheme pass rush without it being stunted or blitzed in some package or some sub package? Are we going to have to bring in, the safety? We have to bring a safety. Are we bringing backside corners? Are we blitzing linebackers? Are we putting somebody in the box? Are we zone blitzing? Are we going to start having to do that in order to generate pass rush? It's going to speak to us having to address that position group down the road. That being said, do we need to have the elite pass rush this week, Drew? In my opinion, no, you don't. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right, because at the end of the day, they simply need to create uncomfortable situations. They don't necessarily need to put Rudolph or Levis on their backside. Of course, you want that, but if you can't, at least contain them in the pocket and make life difficult. You've got to zone blitz. You've got to get creative. And I'm sure, and I know AG is going to do that. But at the same time, right now what's really worked since the Cardinals game. And I know that's against the Kyler Murray, who's a running quarterback. Don't collapse that pocket on the opposition quarterback. Make them throw from the pocket, regardless of who it is. And obviously, if it's someone who's a better pocket passer, you want to get that pass rush going. But the coverage needs to be tight, man, and aggressive. Yeah, this is a nice trio of receivers. But the Lions faced a nice trio of receivers against Seattle, and they were able to. The game plan worked. Mind you, they still allowed 29 points in that game. But when the chips were down and they needed a play, they made the play. So again, they're not going to face this offense is going to be as explosive, because regardless of who's at quarterback, I'm not saying you don't respect them, but this isn't Kyler Murray. This isn't Jordan. This isn't Love. This isn't one of the guys you're going to, or Purdy. Let's face it, Will Levis is playing for his career at this point right now for his next contract. I'm going to expect him to play a little better. And maybe he will without the pressure of being in Tennessee. But in Detroit, it's a very hostile environment. I think the crowd's going to have a big factor in this game. I don't think either of them will be able to maintain the composure level that you need to kind of drown that out and focus on the task at hand. Levis has taken 15 sacks in 5 games, coach, 3 a game. So that's a decent amount there. Rudolph got drilled 4 times in his start, four sacks. So I think they're gonna get to them. I think the pass rush organically will happen. I think what they'll do is wear down that offensive line eventually too. So I think the first half is kind of the storm the Lions will have to weather if there is one. But Terry and Arnold, Carlton Davis, and Amick Robertson, they got it. They're going to do their thing. Brian Branch has been perhaps defensive player of the year this year. 4 interceptions. He's been tremendous against the run, and that's with missing a game too, Coach. So I really like the Lions' chances here, but I think the game plan is stick to what's working right now. I don't think they got to get too fancy.
Right. And we mentioned, or you had mentioned earlier, Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks, and Tyler Boyd. I mean, they did just trade away to the Kansas City Chiefs. Definitely their most decorated wide receiver, which is DeAndre Hopkins, which, I'm not sure where they would put Carlton Davis. And if Hopkins was still here, if they would put him over Hopkins and then let young Terrian, play off and play off the Y receiver. But, or if they would have Terrion Arnold try his hand at defending a guru, a wizard of movement and route running and coming back to the ball and protecting his back shoulder like DeAndre Hopkins. I think Treylon Burks may be a little easier cover. I'm just saying. Because Treylon Burks got to go out there and earn his, Canton sports coat, if you know what I'm saying. And DeAndre's starting to talk about getting some measurements for one of those. Because I think one day he could end up being in the field over at Canton, Ohio. So, I mean, that is a help too. That, a huge piece is gone. But you'd mentioned two good running backs and Ty Spears, and more so over Tony Pollard, who he's coming back home, even though he's from Memphis and southern Tennessee or Mississippi. He's coming back. He's back in his native area of Tennessee, and he's missed over in Dallas. I'll tell you that much. And that's the name of the game. And I think you spoke to it too, Drew. You hit it home. The interior of our defensive line, and that's going to be DJ Reader, Aleem McNeil, Le'Veon Ruzwike a little bit. He's going to be coming, in and out of there a little bit and doing some different things, on the edge and on the inside. They are going to be the guys that really make the run game kind of hopefully minimized, and they are also going to provide us with the real fuel of a pass rush. And like you said, that's pushing pocket maybe out towards the contain, and deepening it a little bit for guys like Josh Paschal and some of the other edge players that we're going to be looking at, for Levy being another one, and keeping things framed and getting to it a little bit more as well. So, I mean, hey, this pass rush is a work in progress. James Houston, man, I would love for that kid to really be able to kind of get to the forefront and have a game like he did 2 years ago when he was impacting the league at he had 8.5 sacks that year. Games.
Yeah,
he was really, really impressive. So it's why he off of that performance is why he's still here. So I mean, I'm thinking the same thing as well, Drew. Those defensive tackles of the Detroit Lions and that interior group is going to have maybe the biggest influence on this game. That in the secondary, and hey, we're talking about like almost like we know their names very, very well, and we love how they play. But this, the group that doesn't seem to get the pat on the back or the panache around here is the linebacking core.
That's a good point.
And there's yet another edge rusher that's out, Derek Barnes. That's a guy that could play linebacker or come up and do some different things. Jack Campbell's getting used that way a little bit with some of his length.
Having a big year.
And Alex Anzalone can do it as well. But, and I was talking with a great coaching colleague, just remarked the other, like how Alex Anzalone is in position every single time. People can say what they want about him being a dominant player or a tremendous athletic advantage out there. he is always in the right spot. He is a savvy football player, and it's going to keep him playing in this league a long time. He's one of those guys that might get 13, 14 years. Because, I mean, he's just that, he has that kind of savvy, and I think that wears off too. I think you're seeing a Jack Campbell kind of, it's really helping impact his, impact out there. And one of the more unsung, we have, Jalen Reeves is a very good athlete and a tremendous special teamer. Malcolm Rodriguez is another guy that, I mean, I think in good organizations, players of his, caliber, Drew. I mean, the good organizations keep guys like that around 8-9 years. They'll play. They may be like sort of backup rotational pieces, but they'll play 8, 9, 10 years in the same city because of their value they hold. And he's out there making plays still. He started 3 years ago and he was productive. But obviously, our defense is taking a step up with some different talent package, and we run so much 4-2 defense with two kind of like nickel look that or two a 3 safety look or an inside corner, however you want to frame it. That we only see the 2 backers, but where do you see a guy that's not getting the credit he deserves on this defense, Drew? Who's a guy?
Well,
it's Alex Anzalone and Carlton Davis. I think those 2 guys have been fantastic.
I was gonna go with I agree with you. I was gonna go with Campbell. He's leading the team in tackles. He stepped in when Derek Barnes went down, and this team really didn't miss a beat. And that's saying something because Derek Barnes was playing at a high level early on. He had that hellified interception against Tampa Bay in the playoffs last year at the end of that game. I mean, Derek Barnes and there was a point a couple years ago where we weren't sure if Derek Barnes was going to really pan out, and damn if he didn't. So be looking forward to having him back next season. I don't know if he's going to be able to come back late this year. I doubt it. John Kaminsky might. But Jack Campbell's really, really stepped up. And then Malcolm Rodriguez is not a guy, he wasn't going to start. He likely was going to contribute heavily on special teams and definitely get his reps in. But he stepped in. He has 2 sacks this year. He's the only Lion, I believe, that has more than 1 other than Aiden Hutchinson right now. So that's, Malcolm Rodriguez can do that. He's very quick. He's strong. He's a great leverage tackler. But yeah, I would agree. The linebacking core as a whole, and Anzalone, the first half of his first season in Detroit. I mean, I know we weren't happy with how he was playing, but man, something clicked with that whole team. Alex Anzalone's been outstanding. He's what we wanted out of a Florida Gator linebacker that they drafted a few years back, right? Jared Davis.
40. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at least they finally found their Gator linebacker. Not, no knock on Davis. He just kind of was, he was going to rush the quarterback, and that was about it. But Anzalone is just, he's money. He is his gap discipline, his speed, his sideline to sideline quickness. He's definite leader out there, and he's a hell of a player. They missed him when he had to miss 1 game for a concussion this season. Yeah. I'll say
that will become the concern with Alex Anzalone. Is if he physically just he breaks down and it's just time to go. But there's another guy that I would really think that he sees this as a destination for him and be another player that can extend, sign 1-2 year deals. And he may be at a window now where he's a 1 year guy, and then retire. But, end up, being a Lion 8-9 years, and he played in New Orleans, prior to this. So, I mean, we're now talking about a guy that's, we drafted. So, I just said that was a guy worth talking about, in my opinion, Drew. I just think he's a little bit unsung. And I am very, very grateful for the acquisition of Carlton Davis. I think, the Seattle game really proved his worth. I mean, he went toe for toe with old DK Metcalf.
He did.
And yeah, he took a couple of penalties, but he went toe to toe with that big physical son of a gun, who's probably, I think, one of the toughest covers and more dominant players in this league. Yes, there's receivers that have bigger numbers at the end of the year, but he's always in the top 10, and he is tough to cover. He is big, physical, and fast. I mean that is just hard to deal with from the player's side of things. And he did a great job. He did a great job with that. So, I mean, he is our junkyard dog. He is the guy to put on the X and say, let's party. He's that guy. Terry and Arnold's got some things to learn from, and who knows? I mean, Rakestraw could end up becoming that type of guy himself. But and Amik Robinson's been great. He's been great. He is more of our nickel guy, but he has been very, very good. And there's been some times he's gotten beat too. Those safeties, we can laud them all day long. Like you'd say, Brian Branch is a guy that hopefully one day, is in that ring of honor. He's a guy that plays here as the length of his career, or the majority of his career, 8, 9, 10 years or more. And, and wins multiple Super Bowls and is a future Hall of Famer. Kirby Joseph has been an absolute assassin himself.
Yep.
That guy is worth his weight in gold. There's another guy that, that's where we got to be careful, Drew, don't you think? And what we do here at Castle Street, yes, we need to do something. We do. But I don't see that in the form of Garrett or Crosby.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Landry.
We need to be smart about it. And anyone that's long term, a long term, contract, it's just probably not wise to do that for us. We need to replace Aiden Hutchinson, and at the very most have a 1-year tandem with him, while we try to fortify that behind him. The first round draft picks that you would spend, or the day 2 picks that you would spend, those are guys that Brad Holmes is going to find as fits, and we will develop them into starters that are every bit as productive as those guys that we're mentioning. Are they as good as Max Crosby? Probably not, but they're going to be as productive for the Detroit Lions at a fraction of the cost. And that's how these good teams are built, folks. It's how they're built. And that's how your Detroit Lions are built. And we got to be smart about it. I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm not anti-free agent. I am not at all. Not at all. But, we've had big spending sprees. I know we had one under Matt Patricia. We got Trey Flowers and a bunch of other players that came in here, and we saw how that materialized. We did that under Millen, Schrader and all these other players that we brought in here didn't materialize. And we've done the free agent thing. This is the way it's done. And this is the way it was done in our era, in our childhood, Drew, which in the 90s, outside of the 1950s, the 90s were just about as fruitful of a decade as the Detroit Lions had. We had Chuck Hughes and Chuck Schmidt and those guys, or not Ron Hughes and Chuck Schmidt, and those guys, doing some good things, getting some good football players in there. What are your thoughts, Drew? What should we do with this? How far are you willing to go in regards to this investment that we do need to make? We should. It's only responsible that we answer it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, there's no arguing with the folks that are hell bent on spending the big bucks and going to get the Max Crosbys. So I'm not even going to try to convince people. It's like trying to convince people who to vote for. Good luck. Bottom line is, it's facts and data. It's not my opinion.
Do you want one Super Bowl, or do you want to win many?
And I hear that. Oh, this is their window. Really? So you're telling me next year and 2 years from now, the Lions have zero chance of making the Super Bowl? Okay, right? Yeah. No, come on. Let's be real. But the facts and data are, you're not going to have a window if you bring in another player at $25 million a clip for another 2 years. You're not re-signing Brian Branch. You're not re-signing Jahmyr Gibbs. And we said this on our last episode with the Viking preview and the Dallas Cowboy review. You can check it out on YouTube. Check it out on our Facebook page and our Twitter handle at Sports P podcast. My God, can I say that 3 times in a row? But bottom line is, yeah, of course I want to get a pass rusher, but you're not going to replace Aiden Hutchinson. And oh, by the way, can anyone attribute a question? What round was Max Crosby drafted? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't day one. I believe it was round 3 or 4. So, and what round was Brian Branch drafted in? It wasn't day one. I mean, there's a lot. Try day 3.
Kirby Joseph.
3rd round, day 2. Yeah.
Graham Glasgow. Because we drafted him.
Oh yeah, we drafted him. I believe that was day 2 as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, and again, would I trade the draft capital for Crosby? Yeah, I would. Because Max Crosby, you're hoping your first round day 1 pick will be as good as Max Crosby. It likely won't be. So I get that. But that's not the be all end all. You can talk about a Super Bowl window, and then you can talk about the draft capital. There's arguments to be made there. But then the salary cap is the deal clincher. If you're going to retain your core and keep building around your core with that draft capital you're talking about, Coach, you can't go get a guy like Crosby. You can't get a guy like Myles Garrett because they're just going to cost too damn much money. And even Campbell said it in this press conference. I believe it was the day after the Dallas game. He said, yeah, we'd love to get a guy like that, but then you got to look at the financial situation. And what are we going to do? Trade Hutch? So you're going to, and so you want to replace the guy that got hurt that you need so desperately, only to have to part with him because you can't afford him now because of the guy you picked up. Now, is there ways around this? Yeah, I suppose, but you're going to have to really get creative. Now, you want to talk about a Super Bowl window. Now you're talking about a salary cap window. You have to make deals and moves to free up the money to be able to possibly add more. The reason this Lions team is so good is not because they have superstars everywhere. It's because they have depth everywhere. Even quarterback, at least there's a Hendon Hooker back there now who's got some ability. He's young. He's got some speed. He's raw. I don't want to see Jared Goff go down. That's the one injury.
It's so different. I mean, the offense would, and I trust Ben Johnson would have the adjustments for it. But I mean, it's almost like a different offense.
Absolutely. But again, we lived through the Billy Sims, Barry Sanders. We lived through the Calvin Johnson eras. The Lions had great players, but they lacked depth at every position. They even had some players in some position groups that weren't solid. So I don't know. I don't want to go back to those days, Coach. I know there's fans that have been fans for 20, 30 years and want change. We've been fans, to your point, for almost 50 years. I don't want to see that again. We saw having the best player of the decade on the team and watching them do nothing. I mean, and it kind of tease you a little bit. So I don't want this team to lose their depth. That's my thought process. If they can add a pass rusher, awesome. If you can't, well, damn it, make it work. Figure out something because you still got a lot of talent on that team.
If we have to spend a day 1 and a day 2 pick, then we need to get a 2-year player because that is going to be a day 1 or a day 2 pick worth of this year, whatever that is, and next year. And again, it has to be done for the right price. I saw in the Bleacher Report, I want to say that it was, to get Myles Garrett into Detroit, it'd be 2 first-round draft picks and a 4th protected to be a 2nd if we go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's 3 day 1 picks, 3 players that you could have for 5 to 6 years and a rookie salary base or extend them if they prove to be a star caliber player upon their development.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just too much to lose because you are not going to get the longevity from that ex player because I can guarantee you if we did make one of these big moves, we would not be re-signing this player once their term came up. So if we did this, it would be Crosby, and we would release him after next season because We need to re-sign who we need to re-sign. So I mean, that's just how it would work. I mean, well, who am I? Some sort of soothsayer or some fortune teller or some crystal ball marm? No, not necessarily. I mean, although you don't know what I might do on the side, I might be a clairvoyant. You don't know that.
This is true.
I mean, just teasing. But I mean, no. But I mean, it's just who we are, and it's just what the good teams would do. Guaranteed, that's what the New England Patriots would do in their heyday. Guaranteed.
It.
They may make that move, but they will play 1.5 years and they're gone. Get them out. They're gone. There's not anymore.
There's logical options still that will not cripple you come next year with the salary cap. There's a couple that we mentioned in our last show. Check it out. We talk about, other people have talked about. It's not like we're the only ones that know, right? But we, to break down the financial implications. And you brought up Crosby, like you could release him because actually the last 2 years of his deal are very low dead cap money. Most of it's not guaranteed. But again, you're going to give up tremendous draft capital to basically rent somebody. That's what teams do that are on their last leg of their championship window, or have just a real narrow scope. This is our only shot. The Rams come to mind. Go figure. I mean, they got their ring. I'll give you that, but they're in big trouble right now. They're in big trouble right now, and they may not be really relevant come playoff time for a while now. Who knows? Now maybe they can turn around come draft day. I don't know. But Brad Holmes is in Detroit now. He was there. So, that's how they built that team up. Go figure. And you needed GMs like we had in Detroit. Martin Mayhew took Eric Ebron. He left Aaron Donald sitting there on the table. Taylor Lewan and Odell Beckham Jr. Take your pick. And they needed any one of those guys. So, pump the brakes, folks. It's not time for desperation. This team without Aiden Hutchinson just went into Minnesota and beat an undefeated team. They were undefeated. And you can say, well, they've got Sam Darnold as quarterback. Well, that quarterback was 5-0 going in that game. So I don't want to hear it. That's a damn good football team they just beat. They're going to play a team that's struggling right now, and they need to take care of business. And then they got a real test after this. And we'll talk about that next week. But Coach, let's talk about our predictions before we wrap this one up. I know we talked about we weren't going to drop the scores earlier, but we're going to drop them now. So how do you see this one shaking out?
I think, again, it's going to play tighter, and then some adjustments will take place, and the law of averages are going to kick in, and the talent is going to prove itself. Lions 34, Titans 17.
Wow, it's like we're on the same page, man. I got a 37-16. I got 37-16 Lions. I think it'll be closer at halftime. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but then I think they're going to pull away. The offensive line is going to start wearing down that defense, and vice versa. They're going to start wearing down that offensive line of Tennessee. They're going to make plays. They're going to be physical on defensive side of the football, as they have been most of the season, which I think is just a great. It's risky in the sense that when you play aggressive man coverage, you're going to get burned at it on occasion. You will. We know that. But that 5-10 yards off the line of scrimmage, bend but don't break, is not getting it done. It was not getting it done. And go figure, now this team is actually, when it's 3rd and long, they're forcing the opposition to punt. They were not doing that even last year. Even as well as they played last year, how many times we see a 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10 converted to a first down when they had no business doing, when the opposition had no business doing that? So a little different team, but love it. I can't wait for Sunday, Coach. Good luck tomorrow in your game with your Mariners. And then, and folks, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Again, we're on YouTube at Sports P Podcast, on Twitter X. Check us out there. We have a Facebook page back. Check us out there. For Coach Andy Shield, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.